Okay, do we have anybody signed up for public comments? There's two sections tonight. There is public comments and then there's a separate public hearing. The public hearing is for the text amendment for Essential Class Services 5 for the solar power generating facility. So if your comments are regarding that public hearing, I prefer that you wait for that, unless you have to leave for some reason.
Travis signed up.
Okay. Travis, come on up.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. It's Travis Manning, developer for the Heritage Community, and I've come before you guys tonight to hat in hand a little bit again. The Public Works for Union County found something wrong with the second plat that I recorded that you guys graciously allowed. And I chased down signatures for the last couple of days and got a third plat, and everybody has approved it. Your staff, Bonnie Fisher, and just ask if y'all could grant the mayor one last time for his signature.
I think actually with the changes, I've already spoken with Robin and just signed it when I got here today.
Oh, well, thank you.
I like that for action. I'd like to say I'm clairvoyant, but that's not true.
Careful, we don't want to set a precedent for municipal governing.
Hey,
Explaining.
if we're not here for, both the community, anyone in the community, whether it's a developer or the people, then maybe we should be. Sidebar comment, sorry. Okay, item number 3, additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any amendments? Yes, Mike.
I had one that I'd like to put under new business, an update from Cheryl on a meeting last week with the Sheriff's Department. So I'd recommend we make that item 16B.
Well, since it's not really related, I'm just gonna make it 17, and we'll just bump 17 and 18 down.
That's
okay with you? Okay, anyone else? Amanda, anything? Okay, then I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
So motion.
Have a second? Thanks. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, item number 4 is to consider approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion in that regards?
So motion.
Do I have a second? Okay, well, all those in favor? Thank you. Item number 5, we are up to the public hearing on the text amendment for Essential Services Class 5 for solar power generating facility and a possible decision on ordinance 2018-12 to adopt the text amendment regarding Essential Services Class 5. So I'm going to open the public hearing. The first person I'll ask to give a summary is Robin, please.
You are being asked to review ordinance 2018-12. It's a draft ordinance to adopt a text amendment regarding solar power generating facilities. The planning board has been working on this for the past few months. You have a draft that was given to you. I will point out that there is an error in that draft, and so I did go ahead and fix that. So my draft is updated. But for all of the zoning classifications, you have a set of setbacks. The minimum front yard setback is from the edge of pavement, and that edge of pavement qualifier made it into rear and side setbacks, even though it should be from the property line and not edge of pavement. So I went ahead and clarified that, just so we're all clear. I also want to point out that the attorney and I were looking at this and discussing that there may be some final wordsmithing we need to do, because a couple places in the ordinance it'll talk about solar equipment, whereas in other places it talks about solar power generating facility, and then in another place it breaks out into panels and apparatus and things like that. And so we'll just go through it and make sure it all says solar panel generating facility in each of those places. That way it's just clear across the board.
Consistency, okay.
That covers all the equipment.
All the equipment, yes, sir. But we are establishing an essential services class 5 specifically for solar power generation facilities. It is my understanding that the village felt that certain criteria were specific to a solar power generating facility that didn't meet the other essential services, and so we went ahead and established separate criteria. It will be allowed as a conditional use with standards in all zoning districts. And again, they have specific setback requirements, specifically 100 feet from property lines or edge of pavement setbacks, a 50-foot setback for the fence itself, and 100 feet for all of the equipment associated with the facility.
Have you had John from the planning board review these suggested changes?
We had discussed it in terms of the changes from edge of pavement versus the property line. That was my misunderstanding, but
There were no major changes,
No.
just verbiage.
Sure. Okay.
did you want to review it just to be sure?
Sure, you can do this, yeah.
Okay.
So just to make sure I understand it, it's changed now to the side yard and rear yard to property line?
Yes. The front setback is still the edge of pavement. And that was a copy and paste error on my behalf.
Okay, we caught it before we approved it, so that's actually a good thing.
Well, actually, the way it's been pushed through, I'm surprised we have more items like that.
I can't take credit for that, but I appreciate it.
Thanks for catching the ones you did.
Well, I think the planning board has done an excellent job, so, to get us this far, as we did. Okay, thank you, Ron. Next, I know we've got one speaker that's requested, Jeff Narkowitz, please. Great. By the way, Jeff, I should have mentioned this for the regular public comments. It's a 3-minute timer.
I won't need 3 minutes. I'll be quick.
And just try to maintain consistency, so.
Thanks. Well, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council. I really had questions, actually, more so than comments, and 3 of them, actually, and I'll keep those brief as well. The first question was why noise wasn't specifically addressed in the draft ordinance, and I'm speaking specifically about transformer noise. The second is what the basis is for the proposed setbacks, so the 50 and 50 foot, 50 feet to the fence and then 50 from the fence to the equipment, what the source was for those distances. And then thirdly, I was curious as to why the ordinance would allow for solar farms on all property types, including those where there could be a mismatch with both the noise and the aesthetic profiles of the surrounding properties. And then I also had, I shared this with the members of the council and members of the planning board. I did a little of my own due diligence and actually made a trip out to the solar farm in Monroe off of Newtown Road. And I stood at the fence line and took some video. And I think actually this will be relatively telling just off of my phone if I can play it. And you'll actually be able to hear the sound volume from the transformer relative to traffic, which was immediately behind me. So you can get a little bit of a sense of the differential between the two. Let's see if this works. So you'll hear cars in a minute. So that's at the fence line, that's 50 feet away. I took some video that I won't share here that was at 290 feet away, actually taken from the other side of Newtown Road. You can hear the noise from there as well, but it's probably going to be difficult for the microphone to pick it up on my phone. I'd encourage anyone that hasn't made a trip out there just to make a trip out there to hear it for themselves, so you can observe the sound and see that it isn't just me or the way I took the video on my cell phone. And I encourage you to take a look at the buffering there as well. I think at that facility particularly, you'll see there are some really thin pine trees just on the outside of the fence that provide almost no buffering, and then some really low shrubs. But for all intents and purposes, the facility is effectively wide open. I think that based on some of the research that I've done independently, a couple different things can be done to address the sound issue. One would be to increase setbacks. The other one would be to actually place the transformers, or require the transformers to be placed in the center of the property, which would kind of on a de facto basis increase the setbacks. The other thing that I know can be done, and I've seen it done online, I know that the facility, the transformers can be enclosed in some sort of a, and I don't know if it's necessarily soundproof, but some sort of a building or structure, or at least screen. Also, what I would think would be a pretty easy way to eliminate noise, and probably pretty inexpensive as well.
Okay,
That's it for me.
thank you.
Thank you.
John, did you want to say anything since you're the chair of the planning board, so about this in particular?
Let's see, so the setbacks, I'm trying to remember, I don't know my notes, but I'm trying to remember where we got
Sorry.
that from.
Put you on the spot.
That's all right. We did have an expert come in and speak at length, and a lot of you were there. So a lot of our setbacks, I believe, a lot of what we came up with came from experts, right? And I actually remember them saying noise is not an issue. They said noise is not anything outside what you find from the standard generating facility or electrical transformer type facility which we have all over. So we didn't suspect any noise issues whatsoever, other than what being in the other traffic. I think that those two questions, setbacks and
Property tax was the third that
Property
Jeff
tax.
had brought up.
So when you look at Wesley Chapel, the only property types that are going to be able to have this with the setbacks, with everything, are going to be the residential. And that's essentially what Wesley Chapel is, minus a couple, industrial and office park areas already, which really would be able to meet the acreage size that's needed for one facility. It's just not feasible. So therefore, instead of trying to constrain it, we open it up. We think it's, if anything, potentially another good opportunity for developers, rather than putting in homes and adding to the traffic, to the school, and everything else. But we kind of want to make them more available rather than more restrictive. And of course, it still is a CUP. So that's why we made it available in all districts.
John, you bring up a good point. As a conditional use permit, can we make a condition above and beyond what our ordinance says?
I don't know.
So if our ordinance doesn't say specifically you have to have transformers in the center of the property, can we make that a condition after the fact?
It's been my experience in conditional processes that you can work with whoever is requesting the CUP and make conditions where they've been contested, and I don't know if you can speak to this. I've never had an issue where a requirement brought up during the CUP process has been challenged.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't mean it's not possible. Mayor, may I speak?
As a point of
Well, it's
clarity,
still a public hearing, so yeah, sure.
as a point of
Remember the
clarity,
public.
as a point of clarity, putting the solar farm on Rocky River does have their transformers in the center of that 430-foot property. And the one on Newtown Road that he recorded is a narrow strip, and I don't think there was a lot of room. Those transformers are near the gate, near the fence. So that's, why he was able to get such a good recording of that. But that is what Duke Energy did. They put their transformers in the middle of the property so that it would, and it is a great way to reduce any, noise that comes from it.
So I think planning board and council would need to keep that in mind for conditional uses when it comes up with a request. The other thing that limits the potential uses of these properties is, for that purpose, is it needs to be near a fairly heavy trunk line. So there's only a few places in Wesley Chapel that would actually apply. And I know, what was the other thing we talked about? Can't think of it right now. I'm not looking at you, I'm just staring into space right this second. But, size of the properties. is that I remember the discussion from the expert that an electrical company is not gonna look at anything smaller than, I forgot what they said, 5 acres or bigger than that. I think it's bigger than that, but before they would even think about it. So, yes, you may wind up with homeowners that are putting up for their own use. That's totally different. So, okay. So, council, do we have a, well, first I want to do a motion or a second, and then we can have some discussion if we want to.
If we want to propose one little change, would that be?
During the discussion, please. So do I have a motion on this?
Motion to accept.
You want to close the public hearing?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I make I close the public hearing. We are taking all the testimony we can take. So now, as for the motion,
Okay, one more suggestion. If said motion will be to approve the ordinance, include in there that subject to clarifications to be determined by the zoning administrator to make the internal references consistent. How about that?
That language tweak.
thank you. Yes, as far as the naming of the
Yes.
facility slash equipment slash whatever. Yeah.
So the motion will be to approve ordinance number 2018-12, text amendment regarding essential services class 5, solar power generating facilities, with the verbiage to be adjusted for ease of use.
All right. Do I have a second on that?
Actually, it'll be subject to ease of use and the clarification on the rear and side setbacks, right?
Yes.
So motion, I think we're all
We
under.
haven't got the second yet. Absolutely, for the second. Second, so we got discussion. Okay, discussion. Amanda? Go ahead.
I liked in one of the emails that was sent, one of the small additions was structures, related facilities, and storage shall be reasonably located on the property so as to reasonably mitigate any visual impact. And he had added, and sonic impact. And I mean,
What is sonic, what defines sonic impact for me?
that would be like here.
Noise?
Or we can say a noise impact. I mean, we're assuming that, or we're hoping that during a CUP we would put it in the middle, but I think it's fair to put it in the language that we also are, and we're not just cognizant of the visual impact, but of any potential noise impact.
I agree.
So that way, if we say, hey, this has got to be in the center, or if it's by the property line, we got to put it in a screen.
What section is that? I'm sorry.
It is section 11,
Okay,
item 2.
got it.
I mean, if truly noise is not an issue, adding that in is not going to be a huge impact. So.
Well, the screening is better as well. I mean, the facility, I know Jeff just mentioned, it's not very well screened.
I know the one specifically that spoke about on Newtown Road is literally right next to the railroad tracks, so sound is not, I don't think, a big issue for that particular location. But if it is located in the middle of Wesley Chapel, somewhere near either residential or potential residential in the future, that should be a factor.
And I mean, at least if it's in there, the potential property owner or developer knows that we are aware that noise can be an issue, or might be an issue.
Okay, further discussion?
John, do you have anything to add to that? As planning board chair?
You know, I'm an engineer, so I take words to heart. To me, it's hard to validate that. It's hard, and I think it could potentially be argued for months, you know, that limits sonic impact. First,
Or
define-
noise impact.
Right, and that means you have to put it up maybe, and then take measurements, and, you know, somebody come back and prove it, say, I want you to move it, because it's not. I'm just saying, it potentially could end up in a just a snowball problem, that's all. And when I hear something like that, it's not well defined. it's kind of left wide open. That left wide open can be tough for a developer. That's all.
It's not like
To
we
me,
can
I
put
would
a-
have it was more well defined.
It's not like we can put a set decibel level requirement on that.
I know, it's just, it's tough. I mean, you know, if it was you or me or someone who wanted to go in there and develop it and, you know, reduce the sonic impact, it might be, you know, it may be reduced from what I can do, but it may not be for you.
Right.
Or maybe for you and not for you, without any well-defined parameters. It's hard to, you know, I see that being a potential.
But also look at it from the other perspective. If you were the resident who lived in the house next door, it would be a different story.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it'd be nice for the resident next door to be able to point to a parameter and say, you didn't meet that,
Right.
you know, and you do need to move it.
Well, I think there is a way to measure initial background noise, right, Robin? And say you can't go above or beyond.
Well, and what I was going to add is part of our conditional process for essential services class 2 and 3, there is a noise level shall be compatible with the existing area noise background levels. The applicant developer is to provide existing decibel noise levels for the property and proposed decibel noise levels resulting from the project. Project shall not generate in excess of 10 decibels beyond daytime existing noise levels and shall not in any case generate more than 70 decibels. I think that's what that means, dB, as measured from adjacent property lines. And so that's in for other types of generating facilities. I'm not sure if that was part of the initial package that was sent to the planning board or not, or what, but we do have that. And then I also want to add that part of our zoning code, 156136, every use of land must be conducted in such a manner that regularly reoccurring noises are not disturbing or loud and do not cause injury, detriment, or nuisance to any person of ordinary sensitivities as measured at the property line. And so that's existing in our code right now. Now, you can't measure that really, so that goes back to your initial concern. But just wanted to make those notes.
So if with this new essential services class 5, if we just wanted to add that, well, one of those sounds like we have to add it to the actual,
Yes, the initial
And the
thing that I
other-
mentioned, under class 2 and class 3, the noise provision, we would have to add that.
So if we add that, then we have a place to go back to, right? If we say, and mitigate any visual and noise impact, we have our parameter, right?
as noted in whatever section that would be within this ordinance. Right.
That sounds right, that'd be consistent, like I said, with class 2 and class 3, right? Especially essential utilities, so that's, that probably should be. And that doesn't use for parameters.
Right.
How will
No,
you
that
measure?
was pretty good.
My understanding of this at this point is that through the CUP process, the developer would actually have to give us a report that said what the pre-existing decibels are and then what it would be post, so that we can hold them to that.
Because we don't have any.
Yeah. I couldn't. That's
You don't know how to measure
gonna be
decibels.
Well, actually, the phones nowadays, you can actually get an app on there and you can do it, but we shouldn't. It's written the way it should be written. No, I'm happy with it. I'm there.
Amanda, did you have any other concerns other than noise?
No, I like the fact of having a solar farm versus adding more houses and traffic in potential spots. I think it's a great idea. I don't know that Wesley Chapel really has a lot of spots where this will fit, sadly. But I also, I wouldn't want to listen to all day either, so.
Paul, you have any discussion with this?
I just had a lot of concerns about this all the way around. I mean, there's a lot of kind of unknowns venturing into the new frontier and, you know, certainly not pointing at John about this, but his comments just a minute ago kind of resonated with my thoughts. If we open this up as a new development opportunity for developers to put in, I guess, energy field solar farms as opposed to houses or other type development amenities, what are we losing out on? Taxes? You know, just kind of making Wesley Chapel great. We become, I don't know, the energy village. with a bunch of these? Where do you put the constraints on it?
I don't think it applies in very many places, as I said, personally. I mean, I just think you need to be near main trunk. You can't just tie up to your local phone pole, it doesn't work that way. Or electric pole, sorry.
Didn't
Phone, it definitely wouldn't work.
Didn't the speaker talk about taxes?
Yes.
He did, he talked about that there could generate a taxable income for the village.
There is some, I forgot the number, so I wasn't gonna quote it.
It would be the property, the property,
value of
the
the
panels
property.
and stuff.
The value of the
structures.
property increases because of
Okay.
the farm.
The other thing the expert said that spoke to us was that North Carolina seems to be a leader in solar in the country.
Yeah, I believe they said that, yeah. But I think there were a number of incentives, which I think I've heard have been, some of them have been revoked.
Some of them expired, yes.
So we'll see. But I think under a conditional use, we still have some degree of control as far as where it goes, but you know, how. This is more defining the how is to give a developer to look at it to be able to say this makes sense or not. And it wouldn't be just a developer anyway. We're talking specific, very niche industries, industry. So, but I like the
sense
change.
are how it's bounced off with de-annexation conversations and seemingly how quick a lot of this has really come together. You know, do we take the lead in the county? No effect.
County has one.
I mean,
The county has plenty of these.
So county has one, they've already tweaked it and made it something different. So we're actually learning from them to a degree. And we also call the state experts. I mean, I think that we've gone the extra mile on it, although, you know, relatively, yes, quick, but not.
I agree. I'm thinking 20 years down the road, 15 is this the direction we want Wesley Chapel to look from a footprint standpoint?
And it's not permanent, most of them, they're leased facilities. In other words, in this instance, at least this particular instance, that he's leasing, I forgot the term, I don't know if it's 20 years or whatever, if he goes that route. And after 20 years, he can make a decision,
Yeah.
do I want to just sell it outright? So, and at that point, it's still the original zoning. So, I think you can put there as homes. Okay, so where are we at? We had a motion, a second, we had a suggestion on a change. So I think we have to, I'm trying to remember what we have to do on a change. Do we have to rescind the second and then re-amend the motion with the change?
I can amend the motion.
You can amend this motion.
I'll amend the motion to include the same stipulation as the Class 2 and Class 3 noise ordinances. Can you reference the specific section in the Class 2, Class 3?
156089 G4.
Yes, 15619G4. Add that to the amendment, or add that as an amendment. to
The other
motion.
thing I think we have to go in there is statements of reasonable inconsistency.
Do you want to add in this
Brains have on.
visual and noise impact into section 11?
I think that's part of it. That's what's in that section, correct?
What Ms. Fuller is discussing is that
The one here in class
in the
5.
draft amendment
Yeah.
Section 5.
11.2, we would add visual and sonic impact or noise impact.
Noise is good.
And noise impact, we would add that, and then a number 8 would be added to that would resemble
Class 2 and Class 3.
1560894. If that is correct, is my understanding.
I'm okay with that. You okay with that? So there's the motion amended.
And reasonable and consistent.
And it's reasonable and consistent with the other ordinances.
Well, the statements are here. She's
I'm
got
sorry, I
it.
don't have the statements in front of me.
She's got it on the form.
Statement's reasonable is consistent. Proposed text amendment is reasonable since it will add new class to essential services that reflects new technology of solar electric generation. Amendment will allow the zoning ordinance to remain relevant. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion.
Sorry.
And the statement of
Oh.
consistency.
And have in front of me, so.
The proposed text amendment is consistent with the future land use plan as it is incorporated into all zoning districts equally as conditional use.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Hey, Brett,
Yes, sir.
so this is the first reading of the ordinance, so it's got to pass by 3/5 majority, which would be 3 out of 4.
So Brad has to write.
No, Greg can't vote. Already tied.
Not that.
To tie and vote.
So basically what it means, is it has to go to January, and then we can re-vote on it, or a special meeting, whichever. At that point, it doesn't matter the second time around.
See, I told you nobody likes the word.
No, it's keeping you out of trouble.
I mean, the
Well,
question is this laying on a de-annex this week, if this is not passed? Let's just throw that out there.
I'd be up for a special meeting if need be, if all we have to do is get together and run that again.
I think we just carry it over to January, to be honest. The other, I mean,
Will this land be de-annexed this week?
no. It would happen in January. Potentially.
So we put a lot of work into fighting it being de-annexed 6 months ago.
We did. Well, then we need to pick a date for a meeting. That's the other choice.
Well, we don't know when.
Doesn't
Well,
matter.
second meeting
Second
doesn't
time
matter.
around, doesn't matter.
Oh.
It's a plurality at that point. Correct?
Simple majority.
Simple majority, thank you, better way to say it.
And how much notice do we have to give?
How much notice?
48.
So what's that, Wednesday?
Be Thursday at this point.
Thursday, the 13th.
That may not work real well for staff, both of us were gonna be out of town that day.
Following week? What's the following Monday? The 17th?
17th. So,
Can we do it at like 6?
Sure, I don't see why not. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we need a motion to set up a special meeting, so.
Monday, the 17th.
17th.
What?
17th.
Yeah,
So I'll make a motion that we have a special meeting Monday, the 17th at 6 o'clock for a simple majority vote on the solar farm ordinance.
Second.
okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
Special meeting.
Okay.
Was that unanimous?
Yes, yes.
All right.
Did anybody check the calendar and make sure town hall's available that night?
Looking now on the website, 17th, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
6 PM probably would be anyway, unless it was a HOA. I think our HOA met at 7, if I remember correctly, I missed it last week. All right, thank you. Thank you, council. I think it was the planning board, by the way. I think, again, a lot of work went into it in a short time. I know Deb was able to contact the industry experts that came in. So I think, you know, with a little tweak, I think we've done a good job of being conservative as well. So, thank you, and we'll see what happens next Monday. Okay, item number 6 is a presentation by Michael James, Assistant to the County Manager on the Fire Service District Funding Study.
Ms. Bennett, I've printed some copies out too. Yes, ma'am. It'll be a little easier to follow that way. Mayor and Council, appreciate everyone's time this evening to talk about the fire funding study project. So just some background, we've been working on this since about November, December of 2017. So staff's been working with the commissioners and working with a consultant, Stantec Consulting out of Florida, to come in and, again, just look at the economics of funding fire services. We didn't talk about operations, station location, anything like that. Just how we can have a funding methodology that makes sense over the next 10, 15, 20 years in Union County. So the board's got several options in front of them. What they've asked me to do is to go to all of our towns and talk about the study, talk about how we're currently structured, what options are before the board, and get some feedback from you all as local leaders in your communities. So on the next slide, and Mayor.
I'm trying.
Oh,
I
I wasn't sure if you knew. Sorry.
I printed it off, so if you just want to walk through it, we can just do it that way.
Yeah, that's
We've
fine.
had to do that several times, so.
That's my meals up. That's
I know.
okay. Go ahead. Sorry, man.
So, no, you're fine. On the next slide, the purpose of this meeting today, we're going to talk about what the objective of the fire funding study was, to give you an idea of what we tasked our consultant with and what staff's been working on. We'll go through the current methodology of how we fund fire today. We had a community forum, which some of you all attended maybe 3 or 4 months ago now, with all leaders in our community. The board went to present to them what the options were. And some of the questions that came back were really about, you know, how are we currently structured now, how does it work? So we'll walk through that briefly, and we'll go through each of the strategies that are currently before the Board of County Commissioners as well. And in the end, what I'm ultimately asking all the town councils to do is if sometime in January, if the board could send a letter via staff or from the council themselves to the Board of Commissioners, just kind of stating an option that you all feel is appropriate in your locality. So next slide. Again, the objective, we've worked with Stantec Consulting out of St. Augustine, Florida. They've worked exclusively with fire funding studies for a long, long time. So I brought them on board, again, to evaluate our current method and propose some alternatives that are cost effective for the board to look at. So we talked about the main goals being to, one, to make sure we have maximum cost burden equity among our residents, and that we have a sustainable long-term funding strategy for the commissioners. We had several stakeholder meetings with our fire chiefs down at Mineral Springs. We had 2 or 3 meetings with them to get their feedback, get their input on how we're currently structured, some better ways that we can improve. And we also had work sessions with the Board of County Commissioners and again, that community forum that we had several months ago. Some of the early direction that we received, of course, it doesn't apply to Mineral Springs, but some of our districts are fire fee districts, and we'll go into a little bit of detail about that just for general information purposes. But we know that looking across the county globally, the fire fee model really doesn't work. We're one of 2 counties in the state that use that model. The General Assembly dictates what that cap is, so we have no local control over that revenue stream. So we know for those districts we want to make a change of some sort. And again, we want to make sure that whatever methodology the board chooses meets the future demands. We got fire stations that are dealing with fewer volunteers, the cost of fire service going up, so we're trying to address some long-term goals and issues that we're facing. So the next slide is just a kind of a general breakdown of how we fund fire currently. So we have 17 fire service districts. The county contracts with each volunteer fire department individually to serve a fire service district. So they have a territory that they're responsible for serving, and we're contracted with them directly, just pretty much describing how they should operate, what the expectations are on their end from a financial reporting standpoint and operational standpoint, and then the expectations of the county to them, what is our duty to serve them. So we have five fire service districts that are established or funded through a local tax, Wesley Chapel being one of those, and that was established by the county commission. We have 12 fire service districts that are funded through a local fire fee, and again, they come from the General Assembly. They control that cap, and currently it's at $100. The city of Monroe and the town of Weddington are the only two municipalities that provide fire protection services on their own accord. So they're kind of outside of the county-wide fire service program, since they provide either through contract or through municipal fire department, they provide for their own fire protection services in the locality. So this past year we had a little over 13.7 million. That's the cost countywide for all of our fire service districts to be served. That was a cost that has increased 50% since 2009. So as we talk about the cost continues to grow in 10 years. That's a 50% change. So that's quite a bit of cost that's gone up. And of course, the county has grown a lot since 2009 as well. So that's a big piece of that. And the next two bullets just kind of describe where the revenue comes from, either our fee or tax, and then that countywide tax rate, which is at 1.03. That provides $2.6 million, and which largely goes to our fee districts to help subsidize them. So on our next slide is just a budget breakdown of all of our fire departments and how they're funded. So in the blue, that is all the operating expenses, where the revenue comes from. So you'll see the budget appropriation for Wesley Chapel for this past year was $2.3 million. The local fire tax is $3.54 for this past fiscal year. And then you got the countywide tax of $1.03 far left. The yellow columns, that's where all the revenue sources are.
I'm sorry, what did you say the Wesley Chapel tax was?
Their tax is $3.54 is their local fire tax.
No, not the amount, what was the total?
Their total budget
Yeah,
was $2.3 million.
2.3 million.
That's in that third column in blue. Should be the third from the bottom line.
Got it.
Wesley Chapel. So in the yellow, that's the revenue sources. Largely for most of our tax districts, they may raise a little bit of money, but most of their funding comes from that district tax. When you look at the countywide revenue tax column, that's that $2.6 million that we raise from the countywide 0.03 tax. The majority of that all goes to our fee districts. So as you recall, that we have a $100 cap on our fee. We cannot change that. And using that $100 cap fee, they can't raise the money that they need. So that countywide tax goes to meet their budgetary needs that they have. That has grown. We haven't changed that fire fee cap since 2009, I think 2009, 2010. That's the last time that changed. So again, a lot of that countywide tax revenue goes to subsidize them. Our tax districts basically can stand on their own since they have a local district tax, and they also receive a portion of the county's sales tax revenue as well. Goes to the fire departments too, who are in tax districts. So again, that's just a budget snapshot so everybody can see how everyone's funded, where the revenue's coming from, and what the budget requests that the board got this past year. The next few slides is just some general notes. I'll kind of run through these, but we asked the consultant to share with the board just some general overview of what the county's facing when it comes to fire services. So 80% of what our volunteer fire departments do really has nothing to do with fire, even though it really doesn't matter that one fire is very important, but the majority of what they do is life-saving, life-protective services, and they do a great job at that. They respond to roadway accidents, falls, medical issues, whatever it may be. They're usually all the first responders on the scene, so they have a much bigger role than just fire protection services overall. Next slide, it just talks about some of the taxable values across the county. So the Board of County Commissioners are looking countywide. We know the specifics of each district, but it's important when we're thinking about a countywide system, some of the differences between each other. So just a point, we have a district, I believe it's Stack Road or Allen's Crossroads, that has total taxable value in the whole district of $126 million that they have capable to tax, or able to be taxed. And then we have a Wesley Chapel, which is about $5 billion worth of taxable value. So again, two very different worlds that we're trying to figure out the best way to fund fire services across the county. Next slide is just a point about the agricultural land, again, looking at some of our more rural districts. We have parcels or fire districts that are heavily, have agricultural presence in their district. And those presence, or those parcels, excuse me, are largely tax deferred through some of the farm deferment tax programs. It's a great program, but when we talk about funding a service, that does cause a little bit of an issue of raising some money in some of those more heavily agricultural fire districts. But again, that's just a note for council to see that what the board's looking at. The next slide just shows where the density of the county is. When you look at Springs, Waxhaw, Wesley Chapel, Stallings, Henry Bridge, and Monroe, that is the majority. 2/3 of our population are in those fire service districts. But nearly 70% of the land area that the county is responsible for providing fire service district or fire protection services to are not within those districts, and they're in these much larger fee districts. So again, just to kind of show that east-west difference in terms of density and population. The next slide is the sales tax allocation. We had this question in our community forum that if the county did decide to create or to change over the fire fee districts into fire service tax districts, would that impact the municipality's sales tax revenue? So we wanted to make sure that every council understood that it will not have no budgetary impact on you all. The sales tax money that the municipalities get is a separate pot from what the county gets. So out of the county's allotment of sales tax money, that's what we share with the volunteer fire department. So it will not affect municipal budgets from a sales tax perspective. And this chart just shows kind of how that sales tax allocation per department changes as any county subsidy, countywide subsidy goes from 20%, 30%, and so on. And it shows kind of the sales tax decrease, which is pretty moderate throughout the whole continuum. So just some general takeaways. You guys realize that the Board of County Commissioners are looking at two very different funding models, the fire tax and fire fee. We talked about the fee model being controlled by the General Assembly, so the commissioners do not have no local control over that. The countywide fire tax does subsidize our fee districts for the majority, and they are heavily rural and have less number of parcels than most of our taxing districts have. So on the next slide, we'll run through the fire funding options that are currently before the board now. The self-funding tax district is essentially what you all have. Wesley Chapel has at this point in time. We're talking about that being applied to every district in the county. The 6th district was a consolidation of all of our fire fee districts into one large taxing district. The board took that off the table at their most recent meeting. We talked about this as an option. Next is countywide tax, and then self-funding plus subsidy. The last point being the fee methodology, again, that does not apply to Wesley Chapel. So the next slide, to reference just some points, we had to make some assumptions in building these models. And since the city of Monroe and the town of Weddington provide for their own fire protection services, we thought it would be best suited that if we had any countywide tax rate in any option that we choose, that we would reimburse them whenever they pay into that countywide tax rate. So if we get $400,000 from Monroe from that penny tax, fire tax, we would just give that back to them, since they are not in our local countywide system. They provide for themselves.
Do you know if that offsets the cost of what their bills are for their private service?
Offset, no. I mean, I think their tax rate in Monroe is like 26 cents for a fire department, so it would just get a little bit back to they have a much bigger budget, for sure. Now, what they do with that, do they reduce their tax rate down? They might do that. That answers your question. Okay. So again, some of the assumptions that we made is that the fee district will become fire service tax districts. The town of Wingate does not currently allow the county to collect any fire tax or fire fee within the corporate boundary. So we have worked with the town manager there, and he's talked with the council. Under any change that the commissioners make, we would like to make it more uniform. Where across the board, every municipality does allow for the county, if they want to be a part of that system, that they would allow the county to collect either a fire fee or a fire tax from them. And again, some follow-up bullet points, just some of the estimates that we made in the calculation. So next is the self-funding district. Again, this removes any redistribution between fire service districts. The money available is totally dependent on the density in a district and the development in a district. So looking at Wesley Chapel, under this model, the self-funding district tax rate will be 3.48. Again, there's a high taxable value in Wesley Chapel in that fire service district. So tax rate would be much lower than the majority of the other districts in the county. To give some difference, so we're looking at Allen's Crossroads at a little over 10 cent. Wingate Fire District's about 13 cent. Again, those are very rural districts that are trying to fund their services. So they're in the self-funding tax district. Again, there's no money shared across districts, so they have to pay for themselves, which is the reason for that higher district tax rate. Another option that we're looking at is we're talking with the fire chiefs about possibly keeping some type of countywide subsidy. And they had kind of tossed around the idea years ago is that the county would provide a basic allotment of $300,000 to every fire department in the county, to every fire district, and anything above that that the district needs, depending on its needs, individual needs, that they would have a tax rate associated with that. So instead of doing a basic allotment, we went ahead and did a basic percentage. So what we propose under this option is that the county will pay for 20% of the fire department's operations in every fire service tax district. So currently at Wesley, Chapel, Henry Bridge, our current tax districts receive no countywide revenue. Under this model, they would receive 20% of their budget, and anything above that that they need would come from a local district tax. So looking at Wesley Chapel, the tax rate using that 20% subsidy would go down about 2.79 under that model. And it also, again, just for comparison, it does drop Wingate's down a little bit to ease some of the stress on some of our more rural districts. It will give them some relief by sharing some of the costs. And the theory behind that is we talk about mutual aid agreements, the fire departments working together and serving in another district to help out. We know that does happen, so the theory behind that is that 20% kind of covers some of that cost associated with that. So our next slide is just the countywide fire service tax rate. Again, that removes all local district tax. There's just one countywide tax rate. And that is estimated to be 6.66, which we realized was a horrible number when we ran the numbers, but that's a bad number. But anyway, that's what that rate would be, 6.66. Again, no local district tax rates. And one thing I forgot to mention, under the options, in this town obviously already has a fire service tax. You wouldn't have to approve anything additional. But when we're talking about our Fairviews, our Marshalls, our Wingates, their council would have to vote to allow the county to charge a fire tax in their corporate boundaries. So that's one thing that a countywide fire service tax doesn't have to deal with, since the commissioners themselves can charge a countywide tax. So the next slide is just some of the fee model information. Again, that doesn't pertain to you all, so we'll breeze on by that. And just a last couple of points. We had emailed the chiefs a brief questionnaire on slide 19. Just some simple questions. Which of the funding methodologies do you think best meet your needs, and for them to explain why? We had good participation from the chiefs, and I appreciate that. So on slide 25, obviously I took out some of these. The majority of the fire chiefs all prefer some taxing model. None of them wanted to do a fee model. None of them wanted to do a district or a 6 district option. They either wanted a countywide rate, which was just 2, and the rest of them wanted some type of a self-funding district or a self-funding district plus some form of subsidy.
Is this kind of an all or nothing consideration on some of these options, where unless we get everyone to participate, then one or two of these options will just won't work?
Unless they all agree to it?
Right.
No, I don't think so. I think they wanted to see where everybody was. The good thing about this, they pretty much all do agree that a taxing option makes sense. Because a lot of our fee districts, they all recognize that doesn't work for them. They want to be more like a Henry or Wesley Chapel. And you got that local district tax rate that you can raise and lower as your revenue needs change. So I think that we are getting the feedback that we want, and that's what the board wanted to see, is that the fee option didn't work, and the countywide rate really didn't get a lot of support either. And next slide just kind of restates that as well, so just some of the chief's feedback. So to end it, obviously the staff and the commissioners are well aware of potential communications or conversations with some of our towns about being a little more active in funding fire protection services, Indian Trail, Henry Bridge, Lake Park, and Waxhaw. I think there's serious conversations about what is best for their community, which I think is a great conversation to have. And so the county's just asking to be a part of that and help out and make sure that we're prepared for the unincorporated piece of the county that we need to provide fire protection services to, regardless of what the municipalities decide to do. I think those decisions are probably years off. There's a lot of planning that needs to take place to make that happen. And so in the meantime, it will be beneficial for the county to develop some funding mechanism that makes sense, and for us to be a partner in this whole conversation, working with fire chiefs, working with our local leaders as well. So I'll try to answer any questions anybody has about the options. Again, you all are already a taxing district, so it's a little less daunting than some of our fee districts in making a decision.
My biggest curiosity was, how does Weddington fund their own fire district? How does that compare cost-wise with what we pay, or with what our residents pay?
Yeah. I haven't looked into Weddington's contract. I know they contract with Wesley Chapel directly.
Remember that fire districts are not counties.
Right, I understand.
Okay. So
Just
this
like
is
they're
the
not,
general
the
public.
same- they're not the same as zip codes, they're not the same as school districts.
There's school boundaries either, correct, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Wesley Chapel includes Marvin, it includes parts of, it includes Weddington. So that's why that valuation you see in there is high, because they actually cover quite a large area. The issue, having sat through the first one, is that the Wesley Chapel tax rate would go up from the Wesley Chapel, fire department tax rate under a county-wide tax scenario would go up from whatever, I remember the number,
354.
Hmm?
354 to
Yeah, 354.3 and 354 cents to point at 0.0661, so it almost doubled. I've got a problem with that, since the landowners to the east, and I understand it's fewer parcels, et cetera, but a good number of them have farm subsidies, so they pay less to begin with. It just seems like and I think they should have coverage, but on the other hand, they're getting a discount, and they're getting two discounts. They've got more land, and they're getting a discount on it, and somehow or other, the area that has all of the taxable value and the density, which means it needs the coverage, ends up funding somewhat, to a certain degree, other areas. I don't mind sharing a little, but that seems extreme to me. So, I attended that original meeting. As Michael knows, my initial feedback was, we just want to maintain the fire tax, and why don't the other areas try the straight fire tax, since it's proven not to be a good model to start with. Quite frankly, there's only 2 counties, as you've already explained, that still have the fire fee, that flat rate, that cap. I think that's where we should go first. But there are some areas that will get hit, but under the county-wide fire tax, there would only be 3 areas, I think it was 3, it could have been 4, of those fire areas where the tax rate would go up, and ours was the highest. So there's just something not quite palatable to me about that. Maybe the 20%, the self-funded plus 20% subsidy, I don't know, maybe that's an alternative, but certainly I'd like to see the straight fire tax the way it is, or let's set a level playing field. Meaning, you don't get a subsidy on the fire tax rate. If you want the coverage, you've got to pay for it. That's kind of the way I look at it. And if that's not meeting the needs, then let's talk about what it takes to make those needs. And I haven't seen that number. So that'd be more realistic to me. That'd be more fair. Okay, they're paying their fair share. They still can't provide it. Maybe maybe there's a way of revenue sharing.
I think this was probably the most telling map you had shown in Union County. And, well, let me ask this question. Who oversees the fire department?
The Emergency Services Agency works with the fire department, but these are individual entities. So the chief is pretty much the lead of the fire department, pretty much the head of the district from that
So
standpoint.
what kind of checks and balances are there with the budget?
Through our contract, basically. So they
No,
can,
I'm sorry, through our contract meaning what?
what they have to provide us with financial information. When they come through the budget process, they sit down like anybody else and explain what their needs are, why they need a revenue increase, what that may be. We try to look for some efficiencies, some cost savings. Maybe we need, this, one example, this district may have a particular apparatus that you want to have yourself, but do we really need two while they're close by each other? They'll have that conversation to try to make sure that we're not being too isolated on an island in our own district. We should be thinking countywide. So I think that's a good check and balance that way.
Well,
And they work together pretty well.
I mean, yeah, I understand that, but what's to prevent someone from saying, hey, we need a new fire truck here in Wesley Chapel where we can afford it, and then a couple of years from now, that fire truck ends up on the other side of the county where they can't.
And then on the other side of the county.
Yeah, on the other side of the county where they can't afford the new fire truck. Basically, we pay for it, and then they get to use it.
I can't think of an option where that would happen. Really, I can't think of an option that would happen. So like West is having a volunteer fire department request a apparatus or a truck, and it would be stationed across the county.
Okay.
And I think that would be a totally different rearranging of the system.
I have no problems paying taxes, as long as I get something for the money I pay. I just don't want to be paying taxes and not getting anything on the back half. That's how,
Now, some counties have a countywide model where it's treated as one entity, but we don't have that in Union County. That's not like that here.
And that's another,
do,
right now, the person that makes those ultimate discussions is the county manager. Not the commission. Commissioners approve at the end,
Yeah.
but the county manager presents the budget, basically.
Yeah, she gives her, no.
Which
Give her
includes
a
this,
recommendation. Yes,
which
sir.
includes the county's portion of this.
Yes. They have several simple conversations about what they need. And I would say rarely there's a lot of things turned down. That I've seen. But we also are very cognizant the board wants to keep taxes as low as possible.
Who approves like the locations of, I know there are individual entities like Baker's is their own, not corporation, but their own universe, but,
Yeah.
you ride down Old Monroe Road or Old Charlotte Highway, here's the new Baker's fire station, and then literally, I think 3 miles down the road, there's the City of Monroe operation. And in their close proximity to the airport, there's different needs, different equipment needs, but it seems like that would be kind of over-servicing. I know there's a lot of saturation, and I understand the density. In full disclosure, I was meeting up with Brad, we were both there. Certainly understand the challenges of, say, Marshall Wingate, not the density we see here, but then you see that close proximity of two really nice, well-equipped
That's a good example.
stations. Of how is that planning being adjusted?
Well, I think the reason that happens now is that when the state comes in and does the ISO evaluation and ratings, they look at the district itself. They don't look at the county as an entire system. So if you look at the county as an entire system, yes, you do have a station that is a lot closer, that the station may not need to be built. But looking at the Baker's Fire District, there's a hole down there, was a hole down there that may not have had the response time they needed. So that's the, I don't say an issue, but that is just the reality of having this type of model, where they're assigning ISO ratings per fire service district. And so probably without that station, I don't know if that's exactly what happened, but I would assume that's what took place when I was built down there. It's the response times.
And the other thing I see is the escalation that, the cost. Certainly, we don't know what the new Great Frontier is going to look like with the expressway. The new, again, I call it the new frontier of growth development out that way. How do you get ahead of the curve a little bit? Because these things certainly aren't inexpensive to build, maintain, and operate, or staff.
The majority of it is staff. I think that's been the bulk of the cost increase in staff. We have districts that either a volunteer structure doesn't work anymore because their call volume has gone up so much. Part-time structure doesn't work anymore, so that's a lot of the cost increases is really in people.
really, it's people, not equipment.
Yeah, for the majority of it. Obviously, you have those years that kind of spike up, those big capital purchase or whatever. But I would say the majority of their budget for a lot of them is staff.
Now, are you considered a 501c3?
Am I considered that?
No.
Is it fire district?
Yes, they are.
They are. So
Or the
that's-
fire department is.
Fire department, yes, 501c3. Are their finances available for review?
They should be, yes, they should be. They have to submit that to the county every year, so they get an audit requirement. That needs to be submitted to the county.
So I call them and say, hey, I know this is interesting, but if I ask for the actual raw information, I can get that.
If we don't have it, the fire department should be able to give it to you.
Do you typically keep it as well?
I don't work directly in finance, so they may have a copy down there. I stay in the mayor's office, I don't deal with finance. But they may have all the documentation.
So if we ask, we can get it.
I will try to help you find it. How about that?
I'd love to see the raw information, because we are talking at least 2 condos. So we're not talking about a few dollars or a few cents, we're talking,
I mean, these are big districts in there, and,
Wesley Chapel's 3 stations.
I agree, I understand.
And that's partly that funding model that you were referring to at Weddington, is when they took over that 3rd station, essentially there was a contract that Weddington had with the Wesley Chapel Fire Department to provide those services. So, because for years Weddington was subsidizing that budget for that station. And there's a whole history behind it that I'm not getting into tonight.
I missed all that, though.
Yeah, well, it was where the station originally was, it was getting partially funded by Mecklenburg, and then Mecklenburg built the station closer to the edge of their county there in Matthews and what have you. So, and then slowly that subsidy got cut back that they were paying to that 3rd station, and then eventually it was cut out. Well, somebody had to fund it, so.
So you said you needed a letter from the council to the fire district?
To the Board of County Commissioners.
Is there a timeline on that?
I'm asking everybody to try to do it at the January meeting. Of course, if we need to come back and talk some more and answer more questions, I wish Chief McClendon was here tonight to help answer some of these questions, because obviously he knows that world much more than I do. We try to work together on this. So you may have questions for him, you may have more for me, so we can talk again in January. But that January, February timeline, I would like to have something to the board saying self-funding is the only option that you think is appropriate, or maybe you understand the potential looking globally at the county, that 20% subsidy, maybe something you can understand, just something like that the board can react to see that you've been presenting the information, that you kind of have a viewpoint on what you think is best for the residents in this community. Obviously, we're going to talk to Marvin, and we're going to talk to Weddington as well.
It's a lot of information to digest. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to, with the holidays, get through it all and be ready by January with
Completely understand.
a letter of recommendation from the council.
Completely understand.
Because I don't claim to be an expert on any of this. I really need to do some research before
If you want to talk, we can definitely talk, do an hour if council thinks appropriate, and answer any questions that you have. Maybe better to sit down and kind of run a little more slowly. It helped me anyway.
What's been the general feedback that you've seen in our area?
In this area, I mean, obviously the self-funding tax district makes sense. You guys have the lowest rates. And so I don't think there's any desire to rock the boat. I think there's been an understanding of looking at some of our more rural districts that has a 10-cent, 12-cent tax. We understand that that's a lot to absorb, no matter where you live at. So I think there's recognition of that. The good thing about some of the chief feedback, especially from Henry Bridge and Springs and another tax district, that the chief, even though the self-funding is what they preferred, they understood looking countywide, 20% subsidy may help out. And at least gets those districts onto a taxing model, and we can kind of see where we land as we move forward. And again, that bypass, they may develop some more and get some more growth, and that may help them out as well.
Can I ask kind of a silly question, or maybe a silly question? What's the fire truck cost?
I have no idea. I have no
About
idea.
250, 350.
Yeah, I was gonna say 500, so I'm good with this.
You have a firefighter here, over 500.
And what's the lifespan of a typical fire truck?
No, I'm the wrong person for that question.
Okay.
I'm talking about some numbers, and that's about it.
I think they weigh 58,000 pounds for a ladder truck.
I mean, I've been in some districts, they have trucks they've had for 20 years, they're in good condition, you know, they take care of them, they be used for a while, but that affects their ISO rating too, is having those older vehicles, so they try to keep those kind of rotated.
So one quick question, if we look at the self-funding option plus 20% county subsidy, if I'm looking at the tax rate, just hypothetically, that we look at the self-funding plus the subsidy, does that mean our tax rate would effectively go down?
Yeah, I believe for y'all.
What page?
0.27, and it's on 17. So for those of us who want to say we're politicians, we would effectively lower the tax rate.
Yes. That is very true.
Stop laughing in the audience.
That would be a good campaign speech, yes, sir.
I'm not campaigning, I'm just here for the village of Wesley Chapel residents and extending that to Union County. I'm here for, make that perfectly clear, I'm not a politician, I'm just here for us.
No.
Well, I thought that meant that the rate went down, their rate, tax rate went down. But that money has to be made up by somewhere, which is the county.
Well,
So-
then the whole county-wide is sharing
Correct.
20% of everything it costs, so, you know, say almost $3 million, everybody's sharing that. But everything we need top of that is just the local district, so everybody's kind of takes I'm pretty sure everybody's goes down a little bit, because you're no longer having to fund everything
But doesn't the county, my point, does the county rate have to go up?
theoretically.
So the out-of-pocket
So
per
it's not-
household,
Well,
the question
that's
is,
what I'm asking.
There's no buy one, get one free.
no, the question is,
What can-
per household, out-of-pocket expense.
Come on, Mike.
Doesn't matter if it's a local tax, a county tax, or whatever. Is that going up?
Well, it depends on if the Board of County Commissioners has to raise taxes. And they're gonna have a budget that they have to meet that 20% countywide fire
They-
protection cost.
They could cut back, I mean, yeah.
I mean, but if we have revenue growth, that we got another reval coming up in years, who knows what that rate may be?
It's actually overdue.
Well, yeah. But, you know, it may not need to be raised. So I've asked that question, somebody asked that question before. I can't say the commissioners are gonna assign a tax rate to cover that, we may not need to.
Thank you.
I was just trying to point out that it's not how much we charge versus the county charge. To the people in the audience, it's how much do they have to take out of their pocket every year to give out for fire protection.
Agreed, which is.
We got a roundabout way to the question I wanted to get answered, because if it's going down here, something's
It's going up
potentially
somewhere
going
else.
to leverage on the other side. So-
Potentially, and he made a very good point.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Michael.
Any questions y'all have, please let me know.
Thank you, appreciate you coming down.
Thank you.
Safe home when you get a chance. John, I know you had a point you were gonna make into.
I did have a question on that.
Yeah.
Of course, we're talking about our fire service, which Wesley Chapel is a class 3 in our ISO rating, which is just fantastic. I mean,
Absolutely.
Unbelievably great. And I think we're talking about fire suppression a lot on this. Like you mentioned, it's only 20% of what our fire department responds to. The other 80% most likely primarily EMS. I think that's the big missing component. We have a countywide EMS system that probably has a completely different budget and works differently. But then our fires also respond to EMS. I think there's a probably big disconnect there that probably the best bang for your buck if we look at how to impact 80% of what our fire service responds to. By looking at how you can potentially combine or work with EMS. For instance, we can't have our own paramedics here. We can have $500,000 fire truck, $250,000 fire engine. We can't have a paramedic assigned here, which is 80% of, potentially 80% of the calls.
But yet you're the first responders, and I get that whole argument. You were, yeah.
I think the argument is if somebody has a fender bender right out there in front of town hall, fire department will show up.
Yeah.
Can't give you any drugs.
Right,
They can't do anything for you,
right,
except maybe direct traffic around the accident.
right.
It's more the guys that are trained personnel that can give you the fluids and the shot and the painkillers and that kind of stuff. That's the guy you want to see standing outside your window if you get into a car accident.
Right, right. So as we're talking about this, right, in districts and, costs and taxes, well, all this is only going really 20% of what fire service does. Fire suppression, fire prevention, and there's a lot of that involved. But a lot of what you see when you have car accidents, our tax dollars not going, our Wesley Chapel fire tax isn't going to those paramedics, right? And we don't have that opportunity. I think from a county standpoint, there could be room for improvement, or we could have more potential opportunity to improve that.
Well, the whole EMS program, correct me if I'm wrong, is run through Atrium now,
Right.
or managed through them.
Yes. We contract with them.
They're looking at strategic initiatives to have more proactive involvement with more mobilized approaches. So they've got smaller units that, I mean, it's ridiculous. You look at it and they've identified 400 calls, and of those 400, there were so many repeats for educated part of medicine and things like that, that they're trying to shorten that up to where they're not having to send out the whole truck, fire trucks and everybody else, if they can manage that from information and knowledge they've seen and tracked, so they can more efficiently run their budget. I don't know.
I work for, Mecklenburg EMS, and I've seen much transition through all those things. Where Charlotte Fire was not have paramedics. Mid-Hill can, right? So the town of Mid-Hill has their own paramedic, their own fire station, their taxes goes towards that. That could be a model that you could look at potentially and say, does that make sense for us? Just throw that out there.
And in most situations, if it goes down one way, it goes up another. So you're paying less fire, but you're paying more EMS. So it is.
Remember, our fires are responding to EMS, right? They're already, our Wesley Chapel volunteers, they're already there on EMS.
No, I agree.
That's the 80% of the calls.
That's 80%. No, I understand.
So I'm just throwing that out. I think that's a component I didn't hear during the discussion that is a big component. And it's the largest component of what we should be paying.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Moving along. In fact, you're up, John, for planning board report.
All right, good evening. We'll talk about what we did in our last planning board meeting, and we don't have one scheduled for December, so I don't have an agenda yet, of course, for January. So in our last meeting, we, most notably, we discussed the land use plan amendment process that we've been reviewing now for quite a while. We did have a vote on that. Our vote was unanimous to have no ordinance. So the more we discussed it, and been reviewing it, for us it made sense that the land use plan should be specific to our village hall and the planning board and the council. So when developers bring us an idea, maybe something that's not consistent with land use plan, it's for us to review and use that plan and look at, does it make sense for us to change that based on what they want or not? Something to think about, right? We had actually someone come months ago and asked to change our land use plan. That's what instigated this whole process of looking into it and say, should we have a more defined process? Essentially, after reviewing it and looking at it from every angle, that is our opinion, and we suggest not having a land use plan. So we don't have one drafted. If it's okay with you guys, we'll put that one to rest.
Yeah, and you mean, not that we don't have a land use plan, we don't have a text change process for someone to request a change to.
That's correct. Yep.
Just so it doesn't come across that we don't have a land use plan.
That's a good point. Now, of course, we can make a change to the land use plan at any,
Right.
when I say we, planning board or
Right.
council can make a change to the land use plan at any time. Or together can make a change at any time, or at least, go through that. But it's not for someone to come in and submit a fee and fill out a form and ask us to change the process. We're saying not to have that process, which we don't have. Other than that, we reviewed the tree ordinance that our subcommittee is working on. It is a work in progress, or process, and we're continuing to make progress on that. Yes.
Question. I think anybody who's traveled up and down Waxaw Trail Road has noticed, just past the horse farm there, they've cleared out a whole bunch of trees that was owned by, I guess, the farmer who typically plants in that field. I guess the question is, are they cutting down trees to make room for more crops? Or are they cutting down trees so that 6 months from now they can sell the property to a developer, and the developer says, I don't have to worry about the tree save ordinance, the trees have already been cut down. I don't like when people kind of do that left-handed, way around the ordinance of, I'll buy your land, provided you cut the trees down now before I buy it, and then that way I don't have to be on the hook for the tree save ordinance. Right, turn it into a development. Is that something we're trying to close that loophole,
I think that is something we're reviewing, looking at how the state, has, I just want to say, I don't know of anybody that's done it. I don't know of anybody that's, in Wesley Chapel, that's applied for a development as an application and has previously cleared it.
or I can think of a couple?
Okay.
They're like, yeah, we're gonna cut down those trees so I can plant crops there. At the same time, they're trying to list the property as a shopping center.
But have they applied for a development like
Within a very short period of time, yes.
that? We are looking at that, though, yes.
Okay.
That is on our list of things we're reviewing. Sign ordinance. As we understand it, our sign ordinances has some language in there that we need to review and be in line with our state statute. So that has become a priority for Robin, and she's going to have something for us in January, February timeline to be, like I said, in line with our state statute. Other than that, we did discuss having time blocks, perhaps on our meetings. We've had meetings in the past run quite long, so that's something we discussed when we bring up our next meeting in January. That's all we had on our last meeting. Guess any questions?
Questions for John?
In terms of the land use plan or the, I'm sorry, my brain's not working right.
Amendment process?
Yeah, the first part of the
Process change?
the land use plan that we do have, how do you vision that if, say, a developer comes, how do you propose to maybe address options for them?
Right, so if a developer comes and submits an application for a development, it's either be in accordance with the zoning that's already there, or they can come forward and it's not in accordance with the zoning, right? And that's something that we'll review and take a look at. And fortunately, we have a land use plan to reference, right? Someone wants to put in, a granite quarry that's in an area that our land use plan doesn't think that's the right idea. That helps guide us to kind of turn that down. So that's probably not something that makes sense. Let's try and find something that does. However, somebody has comes with a subdivision that's again not in accordance with the land use plan, but still makes sense to us. That still gives us the option to approve that, or use the land use plan to help us work with the developer to mold it according to our plan. So we still can approve something not consistent with the land use plan. But again, that's just the overview, the whole holistic view of how we see the village for us to use when we're looking at these smaller developments that are brought to us.
I'm just trying to think if we, not like a marketing budget, I know Waxhaw has a consultant, they go out and they're paying a lot of money to go consult, to bring other businesses and entities in, how flexible are we being, or what's our marketing dish now that we have a communication committee of who do we want? We're still sitting here right now, we went through the petition for no down here, but other than the celebrating the Dunkin' Donuts, which could be very problematic for some people, we've seen little to no movement on the Target Center here, but yet down the road, Ashton's building a new complex down there with whatever is going, so I'm just saying, what do we need to do proactively that we become more workable in a good way with some of the developers and some opportunities that we seem to languish while everything else is going on around. You hear these conversations about tax rates, whatever else. You certainly don't want to vote for more taxes, even though we're spending a lot of money in the park or potentially. In some way, we kind of have to proactively manage some of this stuff.
Well, I think we're doing that for the land use plan, right? I mean, the whole idea of, designating some areas, whether it's office institutional, whether it's, R40, R80, we're planning for growth in those areas, right? And primarily residential. I mean, right now that is our plan, as we see it. Until we make those changes, and perhaps we have, a brainstorming session on that. Of course, I think our advanced sessions help us fine tune how we see that plan get put together. That may be a good way to do it, because, as we understand from the planning board, primarily it's residential, agriculture, you know, it's not the big developments.
Well, that's kind of my concern, not to digress on a bit much different area, but it's like, is the new frontier going to be the R40? I know we did the conservation and zoning and stuff, but is, you know, as you see the growth, is it going to be R40, the traditional, the way it's been? When we start seeing all around now, it's going to, you know, other conversations are smaller, more dense type things. I just don't know, that's what I'm asking, just to make sure we're being flexible enough.
That's a good question. You know, the majority of what we hear, at least in the planning department, is wanting the agriculture, is wanting the rural fields, wanting, I mean, that's primarily what we hear, right? So that's kind of what steers the direction that we go. You know, if we heard different, I'd bring it to you guys, but other than, you know, solar generating facility, I mean, that's probably the most, you know, industrial, that and you know, recently, the corner development was the only things we've heard. Other than that, all the other citizens that we kind of hear from, at least in our public comments, for instance, are more stick with our plan as it is now.
I think, you know, we couldn't get out of the meeting without talking about survey, but I think that kind of goes back to creating a survey mechanism to show how many surveys did we get on that last survey we did that we get turned back in?
260.
So we had 250 surveys returned back in. We've got a community of 9,000 people. Is that a true benchmark measurement of the feel for the community? Again, I didn't mean to digress off into that, but just, you know.
All right. Well, I think our communications committee is going to help with that. I mean, I hope you guys, let's work with our communications committee as much as we can to get some information. I think that does make sense. And from a planning board perspective, we're waiting to hear from communications committee or from you guys. You know, through that field, let us know, has anything changed? You know,
I think that's one of the most exciting things we've done.
Right.
No pressure.
Next, anything? John? Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Communications committee, speaking communications committee. Deb, thank you.
Thank you very much. And the committee has approved its 2019 meeting schedule, and due to multiple conflicts, for the fourth Thursday of the month, we've decided to meet on the third Thursday of each month for 2019. There was falling into holidays and falling into just different things during the year, spring break and that such, so the calendar has been approved. And we can make it, you know, available to you if you'd like to see it. In the month that the village's Facebook page has gone live, it has reached 527 people. 237 people follow the page on a regular basis, and 228 have liked the articles that we've posted. They've put little likes on there. The most viewed post has been the article on the village celebrating its 20th anniversary, but then again, that was 270 views. But it's also more recent, so as time goes, more and more people are seeing it, so that could be part of that reason. The Fall Bash at Dogwood Park was a close second, and it was one of the first articles we posted. It had like 239 viewers. We've posted welcome by the mayor in the time that we've had it up. The Fall Bash, the article on the town seal, creator Angela Lubinecki, a council meeting videos link, announcement about the Southwest Regional Library Community Meeting, and a feature on the village's 20th anniversary. Those are the articles that we've posted. We've had 2 questions posted by the community, one asking for an update on the land at the intersection of Potter and 84, and the other asking about the origin of the town's name. Both were answered in a timely fashion with help from our staff. The committee has made a list of items to be posted, including but not limited to historical facts about the village when we don't have anything, in other words, that's coming up, like our Fall Bash or the library meeting and stuff. You know, we want to try to post frequently, so changing things. And some of the things we're thinking about doing were historical facts about the village, various, you know, fun facts about the village, various things like that. And we've made a very long list about, we've talked about doing spotlight on various residents. Like I I won't give her name, but we have a 93-year-old resident that I'd like to talk to, who's been here for a very long time. And we're hoping to be able to, spotlight different Wesley Chapel residents and do that on our page. And also we want to make it, made a note about the survey. That's very good, something we could promote on that page and continue to let people know this is coming up. And I'm hoping that as we go along, that page will get more and more and more likes and more views. 9,000 people in this community, we should have several thousand, but we've only been up for a month, so it's just getting the word out.
That being said, have y'all discussed maybe asking, I know that there's a way you can make your page visible to people within a certain range, where you pay a small fee, and the fee can be like per person who clicks on the page after seeing it.
They call it boosting your page.
Have y'all talked about that?
We have no budget yet. We're hoping to have one in 2018. But
Because I think as important as communication was in the advance and as inexpensive as that could be, that might be a really good way.
okay, well, we can definitely, I'll bring that up to discuss and we can look into that to see if that's something that we should do. I've asked friends to post our page on their pages. I've posted it on my personal page, and that has worked really well because people like in Lawson and different neighboring neighborhoods that are, not in Wesley Chapel are putting it on their personal pages, which means their friends see it, and it's just like a, snowball effect, sort of. So, word of mouth right now is what we're depending on, but I like that. I will look into that and see what would involve. So that is, that's it. If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer those. January 17th is our next meeting. We're not meeting in December. January 17th is our next town hall meeting.
Did we contact all the people that are on the current Sunshine list about our Facebook page?
No,
I did.
you did. I did not. Okay, thank you.
You don't have the sunshine list I have.
Okay, I didn't know what I saw.
Yeah.
Good.
We'll get together with you. Did you know there used to be a racetrack in Wesley Chapel, coming from an NASCAR background?
No, that's the kind of stuff I
There's a
would
dirt-
love
There's
to
a
know
dirt
about.
track right over near, what is it? Right near where I live. What is it? Not Willoughby. Meadowmere. The property right next to it used to be a quarter-mile dirt track. And
Oh, really?
I introduced my neighbor. He used to race with Ralph Earnhardt and Dale. So, people like that.
Awesome. Well, I'm working on some stuff right now about where the bridge is now being built, what used to be there, and there used to be a post office there. And I would love for us to be able to do that again. But those are some little facts. We used to have a post office, so these are some historical things that we are going to be posting on there, just fun facts and historical things. Any other questions?
I know that we post our town meeting videos on the Facebook page. Is there any interest, or should we be also linking them to our Wesley Chapel website?
What those videos get posted?
I would think so.
The council videos, we have our own YouTube page for Wesley Chapel videos. And they are now linked on our Facebook page. You can go to that and you can see all of them. And we could send a link to Cheryl, and she can post that link saying if you want to see videos from the Wesley Chapel Town Council meeting. It's all on one page. All the meetings for the year are on one long list, and you can just click on it and see any council meeting that has happened in the last year.
But I thought your question was more just directing you to the village website.
Well, I'm just saying, I think it's great that we're recording them because we have more than just our minutes.
Right.
We also have the actual stuff, and obviously some people are watching them and going back and looking at planning board meetings, and so they're on the Facebook page and they're on Bob's YouTube page, but should they also be embedded or linked on our website?
No, you would put a link on the website to the
Right.
Facebook page if you
But we
want to
don't
see
have
that.
that,
We'll
right?
duplicate that. I don't think so. We have not put a link to the
I've never
Facebook
done
page.
it. I'm cautious about all that. Personally, I see that it could bring more harm to you guys than good.
But I'm just saying a link to the Facebook page, not a link necessarily to the recordings of the meeting.
We put out a post about the Facebook page. I
Yeah.
don't know that there is a link from the website to the Facebook page.
I think we should do that.
Okay, just to the
See
Facebook
us
page
on
in general?
Facebook, you know, everybody does that. I mean, even a non-Facebook user like me, everybody does it.
But just a general link, this is the Wesley Chapel Facebook page.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess is that a question for George that we're able to, there's no gray area of connecting the two?
Not at that level. I mean, I understand what Cheryl's saying about necessarily doing it to a quote-unquote unofficial video, but it's a video, so, excuse me. So, yeah, that we can explore separately, but at least let's start pulling the pieces of Wesley Chapel communications together.
Thank you. So maybe if somebody moves here, they go to the website, and then they can also click on our Facebook page and like it.
Question, we were concerned about having to remove anything off the Facebook page if it became controversial, but you have to do that with anything?
Have we had any controversial?
Yeah.
The two comments that we've had, what I've done is I've done snapshots of any comments that people ask questions and we answer. I'm doing snapshots of those and sending them to our admin. And so because we don't have an archiving service at this time, so we are archiving those. But we
No
haven't had-
abuse is what I'm trying to get down. Don't have anybody abusing
No,
Facebook page.
nobody said anything negative.
Good, I'm glad.
There was always the one comment about, we've never been able to get a post office. Somebody actually made a comment about that. We still can't get a post office.
Next year,
Yeah.
we'll start the battle over again.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 9, the council committee. You gonna give us something on that? So,
Well, Cheryl and I talked, and we're, if I'm correct in this, working on trying to get those, the minutes have been done, but, we have to work to get those submitted.
Haven't seen them, no.
we still haven't made that.
We discussed that, so we're looking to get that finished up.
Okay.
That and looking at the projects with the time capsule monument, if that's the plaque, of having them put that out here, the flag center area.
Okay.
Also, we can get them coordinated back with John in the park committee to finish up the dry stack wall, just some other projects.
Sounds good. And as far as participants, though, everybody, I think we had, let's see, we're actually in December already, but everybody that rolled over, most of them were juniors anyway, if I remember correctly, and now they're becoming seniors, or were they sophomores? Whatever.
There's, Justin and Sophia are both seniors, so they'll be
This year,
rolling
so
off.
they'll be really
Yeah,
going
they'll
to
be
May.
rolling off.
Okay.
Kennedy's a sophomore, I think she's a junior. So anyway, this may be a good position to even bring this up, but, let's see. John, what's his name, Cheryl?
Justin?
No, at Weddington High School, assistant principal. Used to be on the planning
Oh,
board here.
John Gregson?
Gregson. Yeah, he had expressed some interest in just helping supervise the youth council. Is, you know, somebody that can come in.
All right, well, that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I know, and so we just have it kind of.
We like to
formally-
understand what that means, but yeah.
Yeah, so you and I kind of have split that up or whatever, or how we can best dedicate somebody a little bit more consistently to that.
Okay.
So,
Let's make a proposal, I mean, let's talk about what, get it on the agenda. Okay. Anything else?
that's it for now.
Any questions for Paul that he can relay back to the committee? Man, Mike? No. Okay. Item 10 is the Park and Rec Committee update.
John's not here, so I'll give it to my best. I hope I hit all the topics. An update on the band shell. We've gotten all the paperwork out of the way with permits and whatnot. Materials have been ordered. But with the wet, cold weather, nothing's actually been done physically in the park yet. But all the materials are in hand, all permits have been filled out. There's been a lot of work done kind of behind the scenes. They are expecting a completion date sometime in January. Again, depending on whether we keep having wet, snowy days. I think this is a little unusual to have the weather we're having this time of the year. The last Parks and Rec meeting, we had the Sheriff's Department show up as well as Brandon. We had Captain Luke. There was a discussion about music festivals at Dogwood Park where alcohol is served. There was a lot of discussion about whether we're required to or not required to make basically a fenced off area, a beer garden per se. The deputy said that you're not required to fence people in when you're having alcohol served at an event like this, but it does help. So the next thing you'll expect to see in the next thing from the Parks Committee is going to be a request in the budget for temporary fencing. We looked at, John's looked at both leasing versus renting versus purchasing. Some kind of a barricade that you would see at an event like that. The DOT funds for the road widening, there was an email that I just got today that I really haven't had a chance to read through from George about, there's three basic pots of money we're discussing. There's the land that we're going to lose when the road gets expanded. That's going to be roughly $50,000. There's going to be the improvements that they're going to be affecting, which is going to be the dog park fence, the split rail fence, and the walking trail. Those funds were considered improvements, and then the one that is in question or outstanding would be specifically the easement. Now, there's two separate easements. There's a temporary construction easement, which means we only have to give up the property while they're working on the road, and then there's the permanent easement for utilities and whatnot. And George, like I said, I have not had time to read this. I just got this late today. Maybe George, you could give us a quick update on the easement situation.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think your likelihood of success on arguing on the permanent easement is small. I asked in that email some details, and we can exchange about that by email. There's some details on where the extent of the easement that I wasn't fully aware of because I couldn't make it out on the map. But I think on the permanent easement issue, that Part F, it just relying on the rules that Part F has published, referenced a grant of any interest in property, including easements. And so a permanent easement would fall in that category, even if you're, like any other easement, retaining some underlying use of that property. There might be some details I don't know that would affect that, but it looks like that's the case. The temporary easement, the temporary construction easement would seem to fall outside of the category of what they define as conversion, because unless it's going to be a temporary easement for more than a year. Their rules say that a temporary easement is not considered a conversion, and they specify that generally is considered to be a year. And then with respect to the improvements, I made a comment about, I don't know where the funds came for the improvements that you're being compensated for. If it didn't come from Part F money, you could probably argue that it's not a conversion.
Right, well, they wanted to make sure that the improvements were made after the park opened, so they weren't part of the original grant. And, I said, well, there's not a whole lot we can send you as far as, we don't have an invoice from the fence company for the split rail fence. We don't have an invoice from a grading company for the trail, because most of the work was done with recycled materials and volunteer labor. The only thing we could supply them with were dated photographs of when the work was done, showing that it was done after the park physically opened.
Did you have, are there any minutes of the Parks and Rec Committee or the council that would indicate when that work was?
We've got that as well. I didn't think,
accepted as volunteer work or something?
I didn't think of the minutes, but that would be a document that we could provide them.
Yeah,
The argument that the Parks and Rec Committee has with the permanent easement, which it seems to be the only gray area here, is existing, there's a 15-foot easement along Weddington Road in the park, the way it sits right now. There's an easement.
That's right away, right? I looked at, and the reason I said there may be details I don't know, I pulled the survey from when the plat, when the property was acquired, and I know it showed right away goes in there. It does show an electric pole, but it doesn't show an easement or electric line. I'm not sure what it was
power line is above ground, yeah.
And
But
then,
there's also an easement along Lester Davis Road, which is the other boundary of the park. And then right through the middle of the park, there's a sewer easement for the sewer line. So there's 3 other easements in the park, and Part F's never said, here's the money for the park. By the way, you owe us money back for the easement for the sewer line or the easement along Lester Davis. But now all of a sudden this easement along Weddington becomes an issue. It's strange. We're basically taking an existing 15-foot easement, we're widening the road, we're moving that easement back 50 feet, but we still have that 15-foot easement.
yeah, I understand the logic for sure. You know, I think the counter to that from the Part F side, I'm putting myself in their shoes, is that the property was acquired with those existing easements, and therefore the money was spent and approved by Part F to acquire the property as it sat at that time. And now what you're doing is converting property that used Part F funds into an easement for which you're being compensated. So I'm not, again, logically, what you're saying makes perfect sense, but based on the rules, I think the permanent easement unfortunately falls into the category of they win.
Well, the Part F is looking at it from their perspective, from their legal department perspective as well. So we just wanted to make sure we were having a couple of different legal minds look at this from 2 different angles.
I mean, I think the way you're attacking it is right. I think the ultimate result is going to be rejection on that point.
If it was for $300 or $400, I wouldn't be discussing it. This is more like $30,000, so it was worth the time to make the argument.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that.
Yep.
We have the irrigation system that's in, that you guys knew about that last month. The irrigation system contract did include the cost for winterization, which has been done. The gentleman that came out to winterize the irrigation system also winterized the backflow preventer, which we had a problem with last year, and it cost us a bunch of money to fix. I think the addition was, there's an additional $80 that we spent winterizing the backflow preventer and the water standpipe. There was discussion at the Parks and Rec meeting about the next Part F grant application, the timeline being 2019 spring. They're putting together the paperwork behind the grant. One thing that they specifically are going to try for is you get additional points on your survey, additional points on your grant if you do a survey. So they're looking to do a small survey to up the score with Part F. The gate replacement, which we've already approved, is pending. The problem, again, being the weather and the fact that the guy is so overworked. We should expect to see the gate replacement. I'm hoping sometime this month, but I have not got a firm schedule from them. And last but not least, the pond maintenance contract. When we first gave the pond maintenance contract to our landscaper, he had someone on staff that was qualified to do the inspections. He was an engineer. That gentleman no longer works for him. So Daryl, is it Daryl or Dwayne? Dwayne. Dwayne said, okay, since we don't have anybody on staff, he hired someone else to do it once, and then he's looking at getting his, to pass the test to get his own qualifications so that he can sign off on the pond maintenance requirements. So I think we should give him a little bit of time to do that, but we've already given him 2 months.
I'm a little frustrated with them because they give us no report, either for landscaping nor for the pond, and I've asked for them numerous times.
Yeah, and John has said the same thing from the landscape, from the Parks and Rec Committee perspective, is they're not being as communicative as they need to, but
He took the test like 2-3 weeks ago.
3 or 4 weeks ago.
Okay, and then he said that he had a sheet so he could look up his results, and he lost the sheet. And
Yeah, I'm gonna give this guy a little bit more rope to finish this up, and then if he doesn't come through with what is required, I think we're just gonna have to start looking for a new pond maintenance guy. And,
Are they actually doing anything with the pond?
well, they're supposed to be testing the water, keeping the banks clear, make sure that the drain is kept clear. And when we've said, hey, look, we just had a big storm, we've got some debris in the drained, he went out there and cleared it. He's also keeping the weir clear of debris and vegetation, which is one of the requirements. To be honest, he didn't know he was relying on someone else that was working for him, and when that person left, he didn't know what to do, so he was learning over the last month or two what his requirements were, but I'm willing to give him a little bit of a break, but not much more. So that was one of the discussions at the Parks and Rec Committee. Last but not least, we discussed the 2019 Dogwood Park events. I don't think those have been set in stone yet. I think it's prudent to build the venue first and then worry about what we're going to have in the venue. Until that's done, I don't think we have any set. Build it, and then we can start scheduling events. So that's it on Parks and Rec, unless you have any questions.
What's the status on the fish in the pond? Is it well stocked now?
It's being stocked on a regular basis from North Carolina Fish and Wildlife. I think the last time they stocked it, they put in bluegill and catfish. And there was some question about whether we should get the sterile carp to keep down the vegetation. So you might see that in the budget request for next year.
And I would definitely like to see this get, because we're already 2 months into a year, so a contract, or when do we actually execute that contract?
For which?
Landscaping was like a month before the pond, but the pond was like August, and I think landscaping was July.
Okay, so it's not quite a year, so, but 2 months is, and not getting reports is, we're already
They did the annual reports because they subcontracted them out.
at 15% or something like that of the year. I mean, give you a 15% discount. I mean, going back to your point earlier, as a taxpayer, I want to get what we're paying for.
Absolutely.
So, no, I know you know that. I mean, I'm not picking on you, but let's.
No, I was actually pleasantly surprised to find out that he took the initiative to actually do the research, take the class, take the test.
Agreed. But
But at the same time, we're still not seeing the back end of that,
right.
whether he's qualified to do it or not.
No, and again, they seem to be interested. They were here at meetings. And so things change. I get that. I mean, I'm in an industry that changes constantly. So I fully understand that. But there's not an option to say, well, I don't feel like doing it this month. I know that's not what he's saying.
And they're not busy mowing grass right now, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Item 11, Cheryl?
For the finance report.
Yes, please.
Okay, you have the November reports, and one thing you all had asked before was anything that Mike spent at Lowe's you wanted to report on, and he spent a total of $22.42 on keys to the irrigation system and 9 padlocks.
Storage container with the padlocks and all? That's what I know.
It's right now, it's being held, it's being locked with cable.
The bracket that you would normally, the steel bracket that flips closed, that you put the lock through is cut. So you can't, unless you weld it, fix it.
Well, we actually have a price to put the swivels back the way they were, but the council at the time didn't approve it.
Anyway, keep going, Cheryl.
Okay. The county, we should be getting a nice check from them this week on taxes. For some reason, there was $22,000, I believe, that came into the county at the end of September, and it didn't get in our October distributions. And when they sent me a revised report, I questioned them about it, and it should be in the bank account this week. We've been having quite a few homeowners meetings here, so we've had a few of those $100 checks, although I have noticed that, and I know there was one group that had food out here. I've noticed some staining of chairs and stuff. I think we need to be cautious about anybody having food. I've seen some wear and tear just recently. We should be getting our quarterly state shared revenues this month, December 15th. We've had mostly our normal expenditures. I haven't gotten the last bill from InFocus. I don't know why not. Maybe it'll come in the next day or two. The audit should be about ready. Kendra was caught out of town with the weather and couldn't get a flight back, but she sent me a PDF of the audit, but I thought you'd probably want to see the hard copy audits, so I didn't print them all out for you. It's also pretty long. Other than our normal expenditures, we did pay Hargett for the electrical upgrades on November 2nd. So that's all I have.
Cheryl, on the audit, you said we did not get hard copies yet.
Right.
Have you seen it?
She sent the PDF, yeah.
So you've seen the audit.
Yeah.
Is there anything that jumped out at you that,
No.
okay, I don't mind going through the audit, but I just wanted to know before I saw it if there's anything that was gonna make you crazy.
Anything else, Cheryl?
That's all.
Questions for Cheryl at all? Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Item 12, Code of Ordinances update schedule.
Okay, we had some questions after last meeting, and I checked with Robin, and she thought it would be nice to have updates every 6 months. And then I talked to the company to find out if we go one way, can we change it? And they already had us down for having it updated every 6 months, but they said we could change it once we do that. There wouldn't be a problem with changing the schedule.
And please, what was the cost on that?
It depends, it's how many pages
How many
it
changes
changed.
we have?
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how much it costs for a 6-month
That's right.
update.
Thank you.
So it's kind of a non-issue.
Okay.
When is 6 months?
Well, it'll be pretty soon here. I'm trying to see if we can we got the solar ordinance. I'll check with Robin and see if we think we can get any other big ones in before the next update. I think I can kind of steer them, whether it's February or May.
Okay. Anything else with Cheryl?
That would be nice to have the signs, that's a good idea.
All right, item 13 is the update on the 2019 advance. Cheryl?
I really don't have any update on that. I would like to get a little more direction from you all. Are you wanting it there's not many places to have the advance. Do you want it at SPCC with the regular, we can only use them, they're catering people, we can't bring in our own. So do you want to have a full meal? Do you want to have more of a hors d'oeuvres or whatever?
I think in our discussions in the past, we said it's not about the food, it's more about the interaction with the residents. So I'd like to see maybe less food, more like hors d'oeuvres, something like that. But I don't want there to be a cost to any of the residents. It would be my suggestion. And I think that's what some of the other council members have requested.
Well, we did talk about having a small, like if we had dinner, to have a small fee to ensure attendance. Because like if you pay $5 for dinner, you want to pay to come.
If 100 people sign up, and then there's no cost to it, but yeah, we order food for 100, and then 50 show up, and whatever. And yeah, it's one of those things.
We did talk about how $20 we thought was too much when we valued
Right.
participation.
Agreed.
So do we know, is there a cost per head when we typically do these type events?
Well, it definitely is a cost per person.
Well, you've got the rental
For
of
the
the
meal,
facility.
we were always picking pretty much the basic meal. It wasn't, we couldn't have gotten much cheaper.
Right, correct. We were always doing it pretty simple. But if we want to do, a bunch of vegetable platter, fruit platter, you know, a couple other finger food type things. Maybe that's a way to cut the cost, but again, I would still like to see, I still think having them sign up and provide something. Yes, I want the input. They're allowed to come anyway. I mean, we've always said that. They don't have to pay anything. They can still come and just provide input. And that's not eat.
But
So,
if we put out hors d'oeuvres and we get 100 people show up, and the hors d'oeuvres just get vacuumed up within the first 30 minutes, sorry guys, we're out of food.
right.
You know?
Well,
But
that's the point.
Are they there for the food, or are they there because we want their input? In my mind, we want their input more than we want to feed them.
Understood, but you also want, if they show up, that to walk away with an overall good impression. And that includes everything, believe me. It includes the venue, it includes, you're gonna get, next year, you're gonna get a downturn if they don't like the venue, they don't like the food, or they didn't get the food. Oh, we showed up, we didn't get any food. Well, you didn't pay for it either, but other than taxes.
My suggestion was having the option. You know, you have the option, and if you do it enough time, ahead enough time, that you've got dedicated 30 people that have said, hey, I'm willing to pay a small fee. You know, maybe it's not 20, maybe it's
Right. I'm
5
willing
or
to
10.
cut rate.
And then when you're there, you get a ticket, and only the people with the tickets are allowed to.
What's been our attendance the last couple of years? I know we did it once at the firehouse, and a couple times over at the community college. It couldn't have been more than 40, 50
30 to
people.
60.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. Firehouse was pretty packed.
It was.
We've had as much as 54 at the SBCC, if I remember that.
Or more, I think
Yeah,
we've
It was
had
more.
more.
Last year, we didn't do it, I mean, it was a short window.
Mhm.
You need to give people time to book these things.
Right.
So,
Speaking of, when is it?
hmm?
Speaking of, when is it?
We haven't figured that out yet because Cheryl wanted a little more direction. If we're gonna reserve SBCC, just see what dates are available.
I think the goal is to
Chicken
try
or
to
the
do
egg?
it in the first quarter of the calendar year. January, February.
Oh,
March.
absolutely. I'd like it,
January, no, but February, March, somewhere in there.
I'd like it no later than March, agreed, because I think we need to be able to have enough time to decide what our priorities are gonna be, which we usually try and do the day after, but then there's a research period after that to try and make sure we get into the budget cycle in May, that we've got enough information to have our budget ready in June.
Well, we also have to worry about facilitator, venue. You know, if we start doing research and we said we can only get facilitator these dates, we can only get the venue these dates, that might dictate, you know, we only have a choice of one or two.
Correct.
I don't have, there was one person who had contacted me that said they did facilitating, so I had the person come in. I was not overly impressed. So I really don't have any potential facilitators.
There's a guy over there, Scott Collier, SBCC, who he could do a good job, just give him the guidance.
They had the facilitators at the library meeting last week too, which I thought were actually very good.
Well, give me some names.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Okay.
Can you send me that contact, Paul?
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get you the names for the people that did the public meeting for the library open meeting.
Okay. Okay, I think now I can get some more information from them
Great.
on some potentials.
But are we in agreement that whatever the cost is, we're not trying to make a profit off this thing. Even if we have to
Never did.
pick up the cost a little bit on our side, because I don't think the council members don't pay anything, the planning board members that attend, they don't pay anything.
It's always been free to committee members, board members, staff and council. It was sort of an appreciation for them too.
Right.
But do you want to charge them something?
Or we can try it once, and if it fails, where we get the 100 sign up, 50 show up, then we know the following year we're gonna charge somebody. I hate to play a penalty like that, but that's,
I don't want to charge them, I'm just, you know, making it something small, like
oh, that's what I said, $5.
$5. You know, like, come in, have their meal, give us their opinion, give us some suggestions of how they want to see us, what direction they want us.
So are you in favor of having a small fee? I think Amanda's saying no.
No, I'm okay with the call, like $5. Because you pay $5 here anywhere. You need a Chick-fil-A for $5, so,
Oh, yeah.
no, not my own.
Not my Chick-fil-A.
You drinking
We
water?
get one nugget.
Yeah,
And it
no
comes,
sauce,
Yeah.
and,
I know when we used to go to elementary school, for events, they just bring in pizzas. The more people show up, it's easy to order more pizzas.
We can't do that at SPCC.
well, you gotta use their food
It's their
van.
caterer.
Unless we use the school, but the school, I thought they stopped that.
They're very difficult.
That's what I thought. I remember that, yeah, thank
Or
you.
fire department.
The fire department room was small, but
Yeah, that was the problem last time, I think we had a lot of people show up, and I'm trying to remember what was the big
I
ticket
think the
item.
room couldn't hold more than 50 at the
But there was a
most.
big ticket thing we were discussing at that point, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
I know we had the Greek food. Greek food was good.
No, it's other people showing up for, we always said the way to fill the room is to say that it's gonna be a tax increase, right? But there's no tax increase. But, that was the way to fill the room, and it was something that year that drove the attendance.
school redistricting or something, yeah.
I don't remember. Right. All right. Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, because January really will need to be, I think, in order to give people a month, a couple of months, including us, to for reserve dates. I mean, we're all busy people.
Oh, but I would say don't charge planning board or committee members.
I was gonna charge them double.
Yeah,
Charge
that's
them.
already in there. Cheryl, I'd be shooting for March. I'd be looking at the venue for March, and then see if you can find it. in
March, you get into March madness, and I don't even watch basketball. I have no idea what it really is, but I know it causes problems.
That's, what is that, mid-March typically? So try and get beginning of March.
It's like 8. I don't know.
Ask Chuck.
Okay,
I'm just trying to give you as large a window as possible.
all right. Item 14, moving on, update on the 2.63 acre parcel and appraisal. So Cheryl got the appraisal, she emailed it out to everyone I know. The appraisal came back at $347,160 for the 2.63 acres because of the highest and best use. It's on the future land use plan, it's office institutional, even though it's currently zoned residential. But the highest and best use would be office institutional. So based on that, I think he came up with $132,000 an acre. I think that's what I remember reading, somewhere around here. We have not gotten a bid yet. You didn't get anything from?
I have talked to, there's a couple people that are interested. I sent it out to 4 people actually. And I talked to a broker for one of the parties today. And there was another person that was going to talk to the planner about whether the use would be allowed there. So there's 2 that are very interested.
Which is fine, and then we will follow that upset bid process. So once we get a bid, we advertise that we've taken a bid. We're not obligated even at that point to sell the property, okay? Even if we, it's up to us. But then there's a period of time, and I forgot what that period is. Do you remember?
10 days.
There's a 10-day, yeah, so if you want to accept that that person deposits 5% of the bid, then
Yes,
there's
the
a
whole
10 day,
bid.
you advertise, there's 10 days, and then if somebody comes in and bids, they have to deposit a certain amount, and then there's another 10 days, in theory, that go on and
If,
show up.
Question. Cheryl, this is for you. If the people you sent it to, would they be using this property as office institutional, residential, or commercial?
Well, not residential.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
As some form of a business, some businesses are allowed an office institution.
Okay. So for them to appraise it as office institutional being the highest value, that's probably what it's going to end up being used for.
I would think.
Okay.
It's up to.
A person could ask you to up it even to a B1 or B2.
They could, but that, knowing our history, I think they would be taking a chance at that point. So My question is, who pays for the re-advertising all the time?
You only,
Okay, and we have to advertise where? Because like something like the Charter Observer is quite pricey.
it has to be within the jurisdiction, so,
The EJ is not too bad.
yeah.
The EJ is
Okay.
not too bad.
All right.
And somebody,
Just curious.
the broker asked me if we paid a broker fee, and I said no.
Yeah, I think that should be your answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Any particular questions?
The 10-day period would start from when council
Accepts
accepted a bid.
accepts the offer.
Okay.
But by accepting the offer still doesn't mean we have to sell the property.
Yeah, that's right, you can, at any point in time, you can say, done.
We change our mind or,
And now council, when I talked to the broker, you know, and they asked me, I said, well, you know, she asked me about coming in at the amount that was, you know, in there, and I said, you know, you can do whatever you want.
oh yeah, don't.
If you think it's, you know, worth 100,000, you can make a bid and council can say, no, we're not interested in
Have a nice
100,000.
day.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
it's- yeah, council can solicit bids, they can receive bids, but it's up
Mhm.
to council to decide whether or not they want to accept one and move
Mhm.
forward with that.
Right. And that's what I told her. I said, I have no idea what council will do.
Can I get an idea from council whether we're in agreement that this is gonna be a all or nothing kind of thing for this 2.63 acres? We're not interested in selling 1 acre or acre and a half or all or nothing, correct? I mean,
Up to the council.
Good to me.
well, you're in council. What is your
I'm the
opinion?
mayor. I believe it should be all or nothing.
Okay, so do I.
I don't want to be sitting here, you know,
I don't wanna have a
I
quarter of
want
an
a half
acre over
acre, I
there.
want this, no.
Yeah, okay.
It may limit the number of bidders, but I don't think so. It's not a huge piece of property, 2.63 acres. Come on.
And Cheryl, do we have a deadline as far as what we're telling people we want bids in by, or is it just whenever?
No, we have not advertised, so if we don't get it, if one of these people doesn't come in, I mean, if we want to advertise it, we can. I just didn't go down that path. We've had people approach us in terms of interest, so that we told them the process is, you provide us with an offer. We decide if we're gonna, as George just explained, if we're gonna accept it, then we have to say, okay, now we have to go through this upset bid process where we advertise it, somebody comes in with a higher bid, we can start the process over again, you know, or they don't, and we decide if we want to accept that first offer, or we can say no.
I'm just thinking of it from a logistics perspective, should we give them a deadline of, we'd really like to have any bids in by, let's say, 10 days before our next council meeting? That way, at the next council meeting, we can make a formal decision, or I don't have to get together for a special meeting just to accept or
I agree. No, I would agree, do we need it 10 days before a meeting? We all you really need to know is if you get an offer and how much it was worth, that's all you're gonna get.
The lady this morning was like, oh, well, I want to get in a bid today. And I said, well, you can send in a bid. Council may say they haven't had enough time to look at it and may not consider it tonight,
Right.
or they may consider. I said, I don't know what they'll do.
I just don't want to create a situation where we have to have a special meeting to either accept or deny a bid. And if the window's 10 days, make it either 10 days before or 10 days after our next council meeting, so that we'll have it when we're all sitting up here again.
There's no 10-day window. It's only once you decide to accept it, and that's the upset bid process.
Okay.
Somebody could come in tonight with a bid, and you could say, we're not
Well,
going to
here
consider it
in
until
February.
next
June.
December,
Yeah.
if
So
you want to.
Cheryl, anybody who brings in something, just let them know what our schedule is for our council meetings. Okay.
And process, which you already has.
All right, great.
So at least the people that have already expressed interest, doesn't mean we might not get others.
Right, right.
And so I think the answer was, as far as the all or none, all.
All.
Or all or partial, I should say?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can we move item number 17 up before we go into closed session? That way once we're coming out of closed session, we're pretty much done.
I think we can do that. So, item number 17, or now, what was it?
15.
Update on the sheriff's meeting. Cheryl, I know you went, I was supposed to go, but obviously did not.
There was a meeting Thursday at the Indian Trail Town Hall the sheriff's office had invited people to. And I attended from Wesley Chapel. The administrator of Lake Park attended. No one attended from Weddington or Marvin. There was several people from the sheriff's office. There was Chief Elmore. There was Tony Underwood, the public information person. Captain Coble, who does Indian Trail, Captain Lute. Also, Indian Trail did have their manager and finance officer were there, and the Union County CFO, Jeff Yates, was there, and his assistant. I think it was primarily directed at Wesley Chapel, Lake Park, Weddington, and Marvin. They want to make a few changes, and they gave a lot of statistics on violent crime, the number of calls, the response time since 2010, and the population increases in the county. What I got out of it, one thing at least, is that they want to take Indian Trail and Lake Park Lake Park has 2 deputies, and Indian Trail has like 23. They want to keep them all under Captain Coble. And but the other towns over here in our area, they want to create a new position, and I'm not sure if it was a captain or lieutenant, but they want to create a new person and a new position, and the county would pay for half of that position, and the other half they would charge between Weddington, Marvin, and Wesley Chapel. So, and a lieutenant or a captain is more like in the range of $130,000. So there would be some cost there, and they weren't sure. The finance officer said, well, there's a lot of ways they could charge it out. They sort of thought that they would do it on how many officers we had. So there's like 3 in Marvin and 2 in Weddington and 1 here. So possibly split it that way, but they also pointed out that, they felt Marvin was staffed okay and Weddington has 2 deputies. We really thought we were understaffed with 1 deputy, that we really should have 2. But, so they talked about those things, and they did say that they wanted to increase communications, which I think is a good thing because we have not had good communication with them. That would provide 1 position, so that if the town had communication they wanted to make above Brandon level, that there would be this person that we could touch base with. But it did sound like cost. And they made a big point of showing all the equipment they carry today that they didn't carry in their cars 5 years ago, and they talked about how the vehicles are more expensive. They've had to switch to bigger vehicles because they're carrying all this equipment in them. They talked about the opioid crisis and that they carry, I forget the name of the medicine or whatever that they use, that yeah, that people are having overdoses, is that the right word, all the time, and some people 7 times in 1 day. And so if they're not out there to administer this, that it brings them back, although they may just turn around and overdose again. So they talked about those kind of things. So the vehicle costs are going up, and all their equipment costs there are a lot of expensive things that they didn't even have 5 years ago that now they're carrying around. And they talked about salaries. They had a salary survey of the sheriff's office and found they were low. And so they took 3 years to up their salaries, and that's another cost. They expect a 3% increase for salaries this year and a 5% increase in insurance costs. Other than that, they weren't too committed to what the costs might go up.
Question, Cheryl. When did you receive the information about this meeting?
Oh, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago. It came to the mayor, and it said for the mayor and to feel free to include town staff, and Brad wasn't able to make it, and I volunteered to go.
It was physical, it was not an email.
It's fine. Was there a reason why council wasn't informed?
They really did not have, council people there. They were
Which
trying to go on
confuses me, because
staff.
we're the ones making the decision on how the money gets spent.
And they also volunteered that they would like to come to a council meeting, especially in March before budget.
Yeah. I just think it's weird that they didn't want council members, or they're not specifically targeting council members with this discussion. We're the ones making the decision on how the money gets spent.
Well, they also didn't have any specifics to present you.
Yeah, okay. All right, just a little weird.
Yeah, we're kind of I mean, the letter itself was more around planning for the future, but then it came with not enough detail. This is my understanding. And so, yeah, I think at some point, if council wants to even entertain a discussion, depending on when will we find out if they're even gonna, because it sounds like this proposal about the lieutenant or captain for, what was it, Weddington Marvin and Wesley Chapel? They're in the process of, what, making a decision, not making a
Well,
decision?
they're just starting to work on their budget. Their budget process takes a lot longer than ours does, and they've been working on it a couple months. So I think it's part of that. It was definitely some PR there.
Yeah.
I think some of the facts and numbers that were presented, they've been carefully.
Crafting it.
Like the fire department presentation we had earlier tonight, was there any kind of a proposed suggested deadline for us to get back to them?
No, because they haven't sent what they're asking yet. I did think it was a good point though. Last year or the year before, we, just got a number in an email. Oh, here's your number, and it was like way high, and we were all like, what? And so I think it's a good idea for them to be talking to us at least.
I want to be careful how we respond back, and not that we're responding back to them per se, but in general, that we want improved communication. And so, I don't know if it's another officer for that, but if this is their first attempt at it, I'm willing to kind of give them a pass. Especially since there were no details or no specific asks. If there was specific asks coming out of it, I think I would have been right where you were. But I think perhaps we may want to have them come in March and do a presentation to the council. If they have specifics.
And if you want it earlier, they were certainly open to coming to speak at your meeting. I don't know if you want it earlier.
I would rather wait until we have a maybe our advance, because I think this is an advanced topic in general for the public, and secondly for.
Well, I'd like to suggest we go one step further. If this is going to be something where a captain or lieutenant is brought in specifically to work out of, I think, Wesley Chapel Fire Department.
Well, they said that would probably be the location because that's the substation.
But they're going to be covering Weddington, Marvin, Wesley Chapel, and who else? Or was it just those three?
Three.
Maybe consider having a meeting where all those municipalities get together and meet again with the sheriff's deputy. That way, since we're all being affected, we're all in the same room, sitting here in the same thing, or asking the same questions. I wouldn't mind having a special meeting to include Weddington's council, our council, Marvin's council, and really getting more into the details of how this benefits each municipality, and does this make sense?
Or a representative of each one, but we'll figure that out.
Right, or something, yeah, exactly. Somebody who's knowledgeable.
Because gathering 3 different separate chemicals would probably be next to impossible.
Well, maybe that's probably a better idea, get a representative or two from each municipality together and have a formal meeting. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
I think all we can do is try to take the lead. They did mention that one of the other two towns had requested the meeting and didn't show up at the meeting, which.
Wow.
Well, we can have a meeting here. We can suggest.
Yeah, I think we can only take the lead.
Why
If
can't
they
we-
come, they come. If they don't want to come, we can't make them.
Again, we can make the suggestion to the other towns as well, don't we?
Invite them, yeah.
Say, hey, look, matter of fact, since you went, that you can contact your counterparts in Marvin and Weddington, make them aware of what went on. Do they see a need to get together and have this meeting? Because I do think Mike brings up a good point. It's always better that if it's going to be something that, I won't say is imposed, but is requested from the three towns together, that three towns get together and discuss it. So, I think it's a good point.
Okay.
And they have come out in the past, I know we had sort of a compressed presentation with all the data. And granted, it was their data, but we don't have data of our own to look at, so, I mean, they are the professionals at doing what they do, so have to kind of rely on distilling some of that down.
So do you want me to request a meeting, and are you asking for who to be at that meeting?
I'm thinking we need to feel out the other towns first. If they've got no interest whatsoever in pursuing this, then
Okay.
I'm not willing to go out on an island, quite honestly, because we're not paying for it, totally.
Yeah, I think putting out some feelers to find out what Weddington and Marvin want to do, I think is a good way to start. And then after that, we'll take the next step.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Next item is a closed session per NC General Statute 143-318.11A6 to discuss possible year-end bonuses.
So motion.
Motion, thank you. Do I have a second? All those in favor? Thank you. You will excuse us for a few minutes. We will be back shortly. Closed session,
So motion.
have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Can I have a motion on, if there is any, out of the closed session for Christmas bonuses?
We say we should make the motion that we agree on, mention the number.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the people?
Well, remember the names now. Make the motion that we provide the Christmas bonuses in the amount of $250 for Cheryl, $250 for Brandon, $50 for Robin, and $50 for Beth.
Second the motion.
Okay. Second, yeah, second?
Hold on one second, my pen is running out of ink.
I got three over here, Cheryl.
Do you need one, or you have?
I have three, but I don't know, I don't
I
have.
didn't mean to make that motion so
Thank you.
fast.
Who did the second?
Mike.
Mike, any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
And the other part of the motion would be to fund those bonuses for the budget amendment,
And I forgot what we have, salary, come out of salaries.
salary adjustment, yeah.
Yeah, we've got money in there for that. Okay, so then can I have a motion to move the $600 from salary adjustment? Move it, does that move that as salary adjustment to a special line item, Cheryl? Or is it just salaries anyway?
To the salaries, yeah, and also to like the fringe benefits, the payroll tax and
Okay, so we're moving how much? I don't know the number. It's $600 plus, you're talking about the
all, plus
other?
any related
Fine.
payroll tax.
Motion for the funds plus related taxes. I'll make that motion.
Second.
To be moved from the payroll adjustment.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. Okay.
We should have a logo reveal party.
Yeah, I thought about doing it that way with that thing, but I thought that was a little over the top. I always wanted to have it, and I'm very happy we have it. Council comments. Who wants to go first today? Got there. Ladies first. It's easy to say that.
I guess I'll wanted to say thank you to John and Deb and Bob and Cheryl. You've all worked really hard this year in your various roles or volunteer capacities. And it's greatly appreciated. I've learned a lot in the past year. And I'm happy that the environment around here is a lot friendlier and cooperative.
Okay, Paul?
I'll echo a lot of Amanda comments. I mean, certainly it's not easy to do any of the roles that are here. Some of them are a little more difficult. None of us are experts in any of these fields that are very, at times, complicated and life-changing and community-changing. So, I appreciate everybody's patience. One thing I will say, earlier, I saw a note that Sheriff Kathy's wife had passed away unexpectedly, so.
So you did see that?
Yes.
Okay. Because we heard it from somebody else and it wasn't verified and I didn't want to use it.
No, that's all.
Thursday at the meeting, they said he wasn't there. He said he had gotten through the election, he was gonna go spend time with his family.
Wow.
So, anyway, prayers are certainly for those guys as well as certainly Mayor Orwell's family as well. It's never easy.
Mike?
Just to echo what Amanda said, it's been a great year. This will be the last time we see anybody until next year, so I hope everybody has a safe holiday.
There's Monday.
Oh, that's right, Monday. Well, I'm glad I'm going home and I don't have to take blood pressure medicine from leaving the town council meeting.
And I'm just going to say I want to thank everybody this year. We've taken some big strides in terms of being able to work with one another, listen to one another, and then try and find the middle ground. And the middle ground sometimes is this way or it's that way, but at least we're having those discussions and trying to be, again, part of any discussion is the listening part. So, and I will put myself in that as well to say that if you don't do that, you're not going to get anywhere. So, and having experienced that in the past as well, it's why I came back. I want to move the village forward, and I think we are. We're doing it thoughtfully, we're doing it respectfully, and we may not always agree, but in the end, we're doing, I think, what is right for the betterment of the town. And as long as we keep that in the focus, we're going to do great. So again, Merry Christmas to everybody. Enjoy, or any other holiday you want us to call in this time period, whether it's Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, or I think there's a new one that I just heard that I can't think of, but it doesn't matter. Whatever holiday people support, best wishes from the council. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second from Paul. All those in favor? Thank you.
I'll just say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Looking at that holiday called Festivus.
There was